The neon lights of the city flickered faintly in the rain-soaked streets, casting colorful reflections on puddles that shimmered like liquid jewels. Alex tightened their coat around them as they walked home from work, the cold biting through layers of fabric. It had been a long day, another monotonous shift at the tech repair shop, and all Alex wanted was to curl up with a warm cup of tea and an old novel. But fate had other plans. As Alex approached the glowing overpass near the edge of downtown, something unusual caught their eye. Huddled against the concrete wall beneath the pulsating neon sign, there was a figure unlike anything Alex had ever seen before. At first glance, it looked human, or at least humanoid, but closer inspection revealed details that defied logic. Her skin glowed faintly, translucent enough to hint at delicate veins beneath its surface. Tiny patterns, like constellations, danced across her arms and face, shifting subtly with every breath she took. She wore tattered garments that seemed woven from some kind of iridescent material, now torn and dirty. In her hands, she clutched a small metallic object tightly, as if her life depended on it. Alex froze for a moment, unsure whether to approach or walk away. They weren't strangers to seeing people struggling on the streets. Homelessness was still a harsh reality in this futuristic metropolis. But this wasn't ordinary. This wasn't even human. Yet there was something about her posture, her frailty, that tugged at Alex's heartstrings. "Hey," Alex called out softly, taking a cautious step forward. "Are you okay?" The alien woman flinched at the sound of Alex's voice, her wide eyes darting upward. For a split second, Alex thought she might bolt, but instead, she simply stared, her expression unreadable. There was no fear in her gaze, only exhaustion and perhaps curiosity. Slowly, Alex knelt down, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm not going to hurt you," Alex said gently, raising both hands to show they meant no harm. "You look like you could use some help." For a while, the woman didn't respond. She just continued staring, her luminous eyes scanning Alex's face as though trying to decipher their intentions. Then, without warning, she let out a soft hum, a sound so low and melodic that it sent shivers down Alex's spine. It wasn't speech, not exactly, but it carried meaning nonetheless. Alex couldn't explain how they knew, but somehow they understood that she was asking for trust. Swallowing their hesitation, Alex extended a hand. "Come with me. I can give you food and a place to rest." The alien hesitated, clutching the metallic device even tighter. Rain began to fall harder, splashing onto the pavement and soaking through Alex's coat. The woman shivered visibly, her bioluminescent patterns dimming slightly as though her energy was waning. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded almost imperceptibly and reached out with trembling fingers. Alex helped her stand, surprised by how light she felt. Despite her ethereal appearance, she radiated a quiet strength, as though she'd endured far more than anyone should have to bear. Together, they made their way back to Alex's apartment, navigating the crowded streets under the cover of darkness. Curious glances followed them, but Alex ignored them, focusing instead on ensuring the mysterious woman stayed close. When they finally arrived, Alex ushered her inside, locking the door behind them. Their apartment wasn't much, a modest one-bedroom space cluttered with books, gadgets, and half-finished projects. But it was warm and dry. Alex gestured toward the couch, encouraging her to sit. She complied hesitantly, perching on the edge as though ready to flee at any moment. "You must be hungry," Alex said, heading to the kitchen. They rummaged through the fridge, pulling out leftover soup and bread. While heating the food, Alex glanced over their shoulder, watching as the alien examined her surroundings with wide-eyed fascination. Her attention lingered on a bookshelf filled with novels and journals, her fingers brushing lightly against the spines. When Alex returned with the meal, they placed it on the coffee table in front of her. She stared at the steaming bowl for a moment, then tentatively picked up the spoon. As she ate, her demeanor softened slightly, her shoulders relaxing. Alex couldn't help but smile, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were certain of one thing: this stranger needed help, and Alex was determined to provide it. Little did they know, taking in this enigmatic visitor would change their life, and perhaps a world, in ways they could never have imagined. The next morning, Alex woke up to find their unexpected guest still sitting on the couch, her glowing patterns dimmed as though she were conserving energy. She hadn't touched the blanket Alex had offered her the night before, nor had she moved from her spot. Instead, she sat with her knees drawn close to her chest, clutching the metallic device in both hands like a lifeline. Her luminous eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail with an intensity that made Alex feel both curious and slightly uneasy. Alex approached cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," they said softly, offering a small smile. The alien tilted her head slightly, studying Alex with an expression that seemed equal parts curiosity and wariness. Communication was clearly going to be a challenge, but Alex wasn't about to give up. They gestured toward the kitchen and mimed eating, hoping to convey the idea of breakfast. After a moment's hesitation, the woman nodded slowly, following Alex into the kitchen. As Alex prepared a simple meal of toast and fruit, they tried again to speak. "I'm Alex," they said, pointing to themselves. Then, turning to the alien, they raised their eyebrows questioningly. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the woman placed a hand over her chest and hummed softly, a sound that resonated deep within the room. It wasn't speech, exactly, but it carried weight, almost like a name. Alex repeated the gesture, nodding encouragingly. This time, the woman reached out tentatively, touching Alex's arm. A flood of images and emotions suddenly filled Alex's mind. Shimmering forests, floating cities, and a sense of profound loss. Startled, Alex stumbled backward, nearly dropping the plate of food. The alien flinched, pulling her hand away quickly, her bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. Alex realized too late that they must have inadvertently triggered some form of telepathic connection. "Sorry," Alex exclaimed, holding up their hands to show they meant no harm. That was intense. To their relief, the woman didn't retreat. Instead, she studied Alex intently, tilting her head, as though trying to understand what had just happened. Slowly, she extended her hand again, this time more deliberately. When Alex hesitated, she hummed softly once more, her tone reassuring. Taking a deep breath, Alex reached out and let her touch their arm again. This time, the experience was less overwhelming. Alex saw flashes of fragmented memories, her standing alone in a vast desert under twin suns, surrounded by wreckage. She was fleeing something, running desperately through corridors of metal and glass until she found herself aboard a ship. Then came the descent to Earth, the crash landing, and finally, the cold streets where Alex had found her. When the vision faded, Alex blinked rapidly, struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. "You're lost?" they asked, their voice trembling slightly. The alien nodded, her expression softening. Realizing they needed a better way to communicate, Alex rummaged through their belongings and pulled out an old translation device they'd been tinkering with for fun. Though it was designed primarily for human languages, Alex hoped it might at least provide some basic understanding. After powering it on, they held it up and spoke into the microphone. "Hello, my name is Alex." The device emitted a series of clicks and whirs before producing a garbled approximation of Alex's words. The alien tilted her head curiously, then reached out and tapped the screen with one slender finger. To Alex's amazement, the device responded with a soft hum, followed by a string of symbols that flickered across the display. "She's interacting with it," Alex murmured to themselves, excitement bubbling inside them. Over the next hour, they worked together, feeding phrases into the translator and watching as it struggled to interpret her responses. Progress was slow, But eventually, they managed to establish a rudimentary dialogue. Through a combination of broken sentences and gestures, Alex learned that her name, or rather, the closest approximation her species could offer, was Lyra. Encouraged by this breakthrough, Alex decided to share more about themselves. They showed Lyra photos of their family, explained their job repairing technology, and even played snippets of music from their favorite artists. Lyra listened intently, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in response to the melodies. At one point, she even hummed along, creating harmonies that sent shivers down Alex's spine. In return, Lyra began sharing fragments of her own world. Using the translator and occasional telepathic impressions, she described her homeworld, a place called Velara, a planet of crystalline forests and bioluminescent oceans. Once, her people had thrived there, living in harmony with nature, but greed and conflict had led to ecological collapse, forcing many to flee in search of new homes. Lyra had been part of a refugee fleet, but when disaster struck mid-journey, she was left behind on Earth. As the day wore on, Alex noticed subtle changes in Lyra's demeanor. She seemed less guarded, more willing to engage with her surroundings. When Alex handed her a sketchpad and pencil, she hesitated at first, unsure what to do. But after a few demonstrations, she began drawing intricate patterns that resembled the constellations Alex had seen on her skin. Each line and curve was deliberate, telling stories of her culture and heritage. By evening, Alex felt a growing sense of connection with Lyra. Despite the barriers between them, their vastly different origins, their lack of shared language, they had found ways to bridge the gap. And though there was still so much they didn't know about each other, one thing was clear: neither of them was alone anymore. As they sat together in the fading light of the apartment, Alex couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Helping Lyra wouldn't be easy, but something told them it would be worth it, not just for her sake, but for the possibility of forging a bond that transcended worlds. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments of exploration and discovery. Alex and Lyra had settled into a tentative rhythm, navigating their differences while finding unexpected common ground. Each morning, Alex would prepare food, simple meals that Lyra seemed to enjoy despite their unfamiliarity. And in the afternoons, they would experiment with communication tools, trying to refine the translation device. Progress was slow but steady, and Alex marveled at how much they were learning about Lyra's world. One afternoon, as Alex worked on repairing a broken piece of tech for a neighbor, Lyra wandered around the apartment, her glowing patterns casting soft light across the walls. She stopped near the bookshelf, her attention drawn to the rows of novels, poetry collections, and handwritten journals. Her fingers brushed lightly against the spines, as though she could feel the stories within. Curious, Alex paused their work and approached her. "Do you like books?" they asked, gesturing toward the shelves. Though Lyra couldn't fully understand the question, she nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Encouraged, Alex pulled out one of their favorite novels, a well-worn copy of an old science fiction classic, and handed it to her. Lyra took the book carefully, turning it over in her hands. For a moment, she simply stared at the cover, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. Then, without warning, she opened the pages and began flipping through them. Alex watched in amazement as her bioluminescent patterns flared brightly, shifting into intricate designs that seemed to mirror the text on the page. It was as if the words themselves were resonating with her, sparking something deep within. "What is it?" Alex asked softly, though they knew she wouldn't be able to answer verbally. Instead, Lyra placed a hand over her chest and hummed softly, the sound reverberating through the room. Alex felt a wave of emotions wash over them, not their own, but Lyra's: awe, nostalgia, and a profound sense of longing. Intrigued, Alex retrieved another book, a collection of poems this time, and handed it to her. Again, Lyra reacted with the same intensity, her patterns pulsing in time with the rhythm of the verses. This time, however, she didn't stop there. She reached for the sketchpad and pencil, Alex had given her earlier and began drawing. The lines started hesitantly but soon flowed effortlessly, forming shapes and symbols that resembled constellations intertwined with flowing script. Alex leaned closer, watching as Lyra worked. "Are these stories?" they asked, pointing to the drawings. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. She turned the page and continued sketching, creating image after image until the entire pad was filled with scenes from what Alex assumed was her homeworld. There were depictions of towering crystalline trees, rivers that shimmered like liquid starlight, and gatherings of her people seated in circles, sharing tales under twin moons. As the hours passed, Alex realized that Lyra wasn't just reacting to the books. They were unlocking something buried deep within her. Storytelling, it seemed, was more than entertainment for her species. It was a sacred tradition, a way of preserving history, culture, and identity. Yet, judging by the sadness in her expressions, Alex guessed that this practice had been lost or forgotten over time, swallowed by the chaos that had destroyed her planet. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Alex decided to share one of their own stories. They grabbed a journal from the shelf and flipped it open to a page filled with handwritten entries. "This is me," they explained, tapping the cover. "These are my thoughts, my feelings. Sometimes I write when I'm happy, sometimes when I'm sad." Lyra tilted her head, studying the journal intently. When Alex offered it to her, she accepted it cautiously, running her fingers over the ink-stained pages. Her patterns dimmed momentarily, then brightened again as though she'd found something meaningful. Without hesitation, she reached for the pencil and began writing, or rather, drawing, in the margins of the page. At first, Alex couldn't make sense of the marks. They looked like a mixture of symbols and abstract shapes, unlike anything they'd seen before. But as Lyra continued, the meaning became clearer. She was translating fragments of her own story, weaving her experiences into Alex's journal. By the time she finished, the page was a tapestry of human and alien expression, blending two worlds into one. Overwhelmed by the beauty of what they'd created together, Alex smiled warmly. "Thank you," they said, placing a hand over their heart. Lyra mirrored the gesture, her patterns glowing softly in response. From that moment on, storytelling became a cornerstone of their relationship. Every day they would sit together, sharing books, poems, and personal writings. Lyra even began teaching Alex elements of her language, using the translator to build a rudimentary vocabulary. Through these exchanges, Alex discovered new depths to Lyra's personality, her humor, her wisdom, and her resilience. And Lyra, in turn, found solace in the warmth and creativity of Alex's world. But the most surprising revelation came one evening when Lyra stumbled upon a dusty photo album tucked away in a corner of the bookshelf. As she flipped through the faded pictures of Alex's family, her patterns flickered erratically. She pointed to one image, a group portrait of Alex's grandparents standing beside a massive tree, and hummed softly. Then, using the pencil, she sketched a similar tree, its branches adorned with glowing orbs. "Your world has trees like this?" Alex asked, pointing to the drawing. Lyra shook her head, then tapped the photo and mind planting seeds. It took Alex a moment to understand, but when they did, their eyes widened in realization. "You think we can grow something like this here?" they asked, their voice tinged with excitement. Lyra nodded, her patterns brightening with hope. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Lyra seemed genuinely inspired. What had started as a simple act of kindness, Alex taking in a homeless alien woman, had blossomed into something far greater. Together, they were uncovering connections that transcended species and cultures, proving that even in the face of loss and uncertainty, there was always room for renewal and growth. As they sat side by side, surrounded by books and sketches, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Lyra wasn't just about survival. It was about rediscovering the power of stories to heal, unite, and transform. And though they didn't yet know where this journey would lead, one thing was certain: neither of them would ever look at the stars, or the written word, the same way again. As the days turned into weeks, Alex and Lyra's bond deepened in ways neither of them could have anticipated. Their shared love for storytelling became the foundation of their relationship, a bridge that spanned the vast gulf between their worlds. But it wasn't just about books or drawings anymore. It was about understanding, empathy, and growth. Each day brought new discoveries, not only about each other, but also about themselves. Alex began to notice subtle changes in their own life. Before Lyra arrived, they had been content with their quiet routine, spending most evenings alone with a book or tinkering with gadgets. Now, however, their apartment felt alive with energy. Lyra's presence filled the space with light, both literal and metaphorical, and Alex found themselves rediscovering passions they hadn't realized they'd let fade. They started writing again, filling pages with ideas inspired by Lyra's stories. Sometimes they even read aloud to her, experimenting with different tones and voices while she listened intently, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in response. For Lyra, the transformation was even more profound. When Alex first met her, she had seemed fragile, almost broken, weighed down by the trauma of her past. But now, there was a spark in her eyes, a glimmer of hope that grew brighter with each passing day. She began exploring the apartment with childlike curiosity, touching objects, examining textures, and marveling at the simplest things. The way sunlight streamed through the window, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft rustle of paper when Alex turned a page. One evening, Alex decided to introduce Lyra to something entirely new: virtual reality. They set up an old VR headset they had lying around and guided her through the process of putting it on. At first, Lyra hesitated, clearly unsure what to expect. But once the simulation began, a serene forest filled with chirping birds and swaying trees, her entire demeanor changed. She gasped softly, her patterns flaring brightly as she reached out to touch the digital leaves. For someone who had spent so much time fleeing danger, this moment of peace must have felt like magic. When the session ended, Lyra removed the headset and turned to Alex, her expression one of pure wonder. Without needing words, she communicated her gratitude, placing a hand over her heart and bowing slightly. Alex grinned, feeling a surge of pride. "You liked it?" they asked, though they already knew the answer. Lyra nodded enthusiastically, her patterns glowing in intricate swirls that seemed to convey joy. Inspired by her reaction, Alex began incorporating more experiences into their daily routine. They took Lyra to local community events, a small art gallery opening, a poetry reading at a cafe, and even a science fair hosted by a nearby university. Though Lyra remained cautious in crowded spaces, she was fascinated by human creativity and ingenuity. At the poetry reading, she sat quietly in a corner, her luminous eyes fixed on the performers. When one poet recited a piece about resilience in the face of loss, Lyra leaned forward, her patterns dimming and brightening in sync with the rhythm of the words. Afterward, she approached the poet and handed them a sketch she had made during the performance, a swirling depiction of interconnected stars. The poet stared at it in awe, unable to speak for several moments. These outings weren't just beneficial for Lyra, they also helped Alex reconnect with their community. For years, they had kept to themselves, content in their solitude. But watching Lyra interact with others, her quiet curiosity inspiring smiles and questions from strangers, reminded Alex of the value of connection. People were drawn to her gentle demeanor and otherworldly beauty, often asking if she was part of some futuristic art project or special effects experiment. Alex always laughed off the inquiries, explaining vaguely that Lyra was a friend visiting from far away. In return, Lyra began sharing more of her own world with Alex. Using the translation device and their growing vocabulary, she described her people's traditions, their reverence for nature, and their belief in the interconnectedness of all living things. One afternoon, She led Alex to the park near their apartment, pointing to a cluster of trees and mimicking the act of planting seeds. With gestures and fragmented sentences, she explained how her species had once cultivated entire ecosystems, nurturing plants that emitted light and music. Fascinated, Alex suggested they try replicating the idea on a smaller scale. Together, they'd purchased pots, soil, and seeds from a local nursery and set up a makeshift garden on Alex's balcony. Lyra handled the project with meticulous care, arranging the pots in precise patterns and humming softly as she worked. Though none of the plants glowed like those from her homeworld, they thrived under her attention, their leaves stretching toward the sun. Watching her tend to the garden, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment, not just for helping Lyra adapt to Earth, but for giving her a chance to rebuild a piece of her lost culture. Their mutual growth wasn't limited to hobbies or projects. Through their interactions, both Alex and Lyra began confronting deeper emotional truths. For Alex, caring for Lyra reignited a sense of purpose they hadn't felt in years. They realized how much they missed having someone to share their thoughts and dreams with, and how fulfilling it was to make a difference in another person's, or being's, life. For Lyra, the experience was equally transformative. She had come to Earth broken and alone, burdened by guilt and grief over leaving her people behind. But Alex's kindness and patience showed her that healing was possible, even in the unlikeliest of places. One night, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city skyline, Alex noticed Lyra staring at the stars. Her patterns flickered softly, reflecting the distant constellations above. "Do you miss your home?" Alex asked gently, knowing the question might be painful. Lyra turned to look at them, her expression thoughtful. After a moment, she nodded, then shook her head, as if struggling to convey the complexity of her feelings. Finally, she reached out and placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, her patterns glowing warmly. Though no words were spoken, the message was clear. Yes, she missed her world, but she was grateful for the new one she had found here. That night, as Alex drifted off to sleep, they reflected on how much their lives had changed since taking in the homeless alien woman. What had started as a simple act of compassion had blossomed into something extraordinary, a partnership built on trust, creativity, and mutual respect. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, Alex knew one thing for certain: they were ready to face them together. It was a quiet morning when Lyra finally revealed the purpose of the metallic device she had carried with her since Alex first found her. Up until now, she had kept it close at all times, cradling it protectively as though it held secrets too precious or dangerous to share. But something had shifted in her demeanor recently. The confidence and peace she'd gained through her time with Alex seemed to embolden her, giving her the courage to take this next step. Alex noticed the change immediately. Instead of tucking the device into her lap or pocket like usual, Lyra placed it gently on the coffee table between them. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered nervously, betraying her hesitation, but there was also a sense of resolve in her glowing eyes. She gestured toward the device, then mind-opening it, looking at Alex expectantly. "You want me to help you open it?" Alex asked, leaning forward. Lyra nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she pushed the object closer. Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure what they might find inside. Was it dangerous, a weapon, or something else entirely? Despite their uncertainty, they trusted Lyra implicitly. If she was ready to show them, then Alex would do everything in their power to assist. The device itself was small, about the size of a human palm, and smooth, its surface devoid of buttons or seams. It looked almost organic, as though it had grown rather than been manufactured. Alex examined it closely, running their fingers over its cool metallic shell. When nothing happened, they glanced at Lyra for guidance. She hummed softly, touching the device with one slender finger. Instantly, faint lines appeared along its edges, glowing faintly before fading again. "It needs activation," Alex guessed aloud. Lyra nodded, pointing to herself and then to Alex. Whatever the process required, it seemed both of them were necessary. Determined to figure it out, Alex retrieved their toolkit from the corner of the apartment. Over the past few weeks, they had learned how resourceful they could be when solving problems alongside Lyra. Together, they worked methodically, experimenting with different combinations of touch, pressure, and even sound. At one point, Alex tried humming along with Lyra, matching the melodic tones she often used to communicate. To their astonishment, the device responded, emitting a soft chime that resonated through the room. Encouraged by this breakthrough, they continued their efforts. After nearly an hour of trial and error, the device finally clicked open, revealing a glowing core within. Tiny holographic projections sprang to life, casting shimmering images onto the walls. Alex gasped as they recognized intricate diagrams of energy systems, molecular structures, and environmental data. Lyra's patterns flared brightly, her expression a mixture of relief and awe. Using the translation device, Alex pieced together fragments of what the projections represented. "This is knowledge," they murmured, turning to Lyra. "From your world." She nodded, her hands moving quickly to sketch additional explanations in the margins of their notebook. Through a combination of symbols, drawings, and broken phrases, she conveyed the magnitude of what they were seeing. Advanced technology capable of reversing ecological damage, sustainable energy solutions far beyond anything humans currently possessed, and medical advancements that could save countless lives. But accessing the full potential of the device wasn't going to be easy. The information was encoded in a format unfamiliar to Earth's technology, requiring specialized equipment to decode fully. Realizing the enormity of the task ahead, Alex felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. This discovery could change the course of history, not just for humanity, but potentially for Lyra's people as well. Yet, without the right tools and expertise, they were stuck. "We need help," Alex said firmly, addressing Lyra. "People smarter than me. Scientists, engineers." Lyra tilted her head, her patterns dimming slightly as though weighing the risks. Alex understood her concern. Trusting strangers with such powerful knowledge was no small decision, but they believed in the goodness of others, the same way they had trusted Lyra when she first appeared under the neon overpass. Over the next few days, Alex reached out to a network of contacts they had met through online forums dedicated to interstellar research. These were individuals passionate about exploring the possibilities of extraterrestrial life and technology. Alex shared just enough details to pique their interest without revealing Lyra's presence outright. Within hours, responses poured in, each more enthusiastic than the last. One scientist named Dr. Elena Ruz, a renowned expert in xenotechnology, offered to meet in person to assess the situation. When Dr. Ruz arrived at Alex's apartment, Lyra retreated to the bedroom, unwilling to expose herself to outsiders just yet. Alex introduced her as a collaborator working remotely, carefully omitting any mention of her alien origins. They presented the device instead, explaining its significance and the challenges they faced in decoding it. Dr. Ruz examined the object with wide-eyed fascination, her initial skepticism quickly giving way to excitement. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "If we can unlock this data, it could revolutionize everything: energy production, medicine, environmental restoration." She paused, glancing at Alex. "But we'll need resources, funding, and possibly government clearance." Alex nodded, understanding the implications. Secrecy wouldn't last forever, especially if they wanted to harness the device's full potential. Still, they were determined to protect Lyra's identity until they could ensure her safety. With Dr. Ruz's guidance, they assembled a small team of trusted experts, including engineers, linguists, and cryptographers, all sworn to confidentiality. Work began immediately, with Alex acting as the liaison between Lyra and the group. Progress was slow but promising. Each breakthrough brought new challenges, forcing the team to think creatively and collaborate across disciplines. Lyra played an integral role, offering insights only she could provide. Her telepathic abilities proved invaluable in interpreting certain aspects of the data, while her sketches helped clarify complex concepts. Though she remained cautious around the other team members, she trusted Alex implicitly, relying on them to advocate for her interests. As weeks turned into months, the project gained momentum. News of their work spread cautiously through academic circles, attracting attention from organizations eager to support or exploit their findings. Some approached with genuine intentions, offering funding and resources. Others raised red flags, their motives questionable at best. Alex navigated these waters carefully, always prioritizing Lyra's well-being above all else. Through it all, Alex and Lyra's bond grew stronger. They spent long nights discussing the implications of their discovery, imagining a future where two worlds could coexist peacefully. For Lyra, the project represented hope, not just for Earth, but for her own people, who still struggled to survive on a dying planet. For Alex, it reaffirmed their belief in the power of collaboration and compassion to overcome even the greatest obstacles. One evening, as they sat together watching the decoded data stream across a holographic display, Lyra turned to Alex with a rare smile. Her patterns glowed softly, conveying gratitude and admiration. Without needing words, Alex understood. They had done something remarkable, not as individuals, but as partners united by trust and purpose. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, they allowed themselves to dream of what might come next, a brighter future, not just for one world, but for two. The road to unlocking the full potential of Lyra's device was anything but smooth. As word of their discovery spread, Alex and their team found themselves navigating a gauntlet of challenges that tested not only their technical skills, but also their resolve and unity. Each breakthrough brought new hurdles, forcing them to confront external pressures and internal doubts. At first, the project seemed straightforward. With Dr. Ruiz leading the charge, the team worked tirelessly in a secure lab provided by a university research institute. They built custom interfaces to interact with the alien data core, reverse engineering its encryption protocols piece by painstaking piece. Lyra remained central to the effort, her telepathic abilities acting as a bridge between the device and the human researchers. When algorithms failed or translations faltered, she would hum softly, her patterns illuminating patterns on the walls that somehow guided the team toward solutions. But as progress accelerated, so did complications. The sheer complexity of the data required resources far beyond what the team had initially anticipated. Equipment needed upgrading, software had to be rewritten from scratch, and funding began to dwindle. Worse still, whispers of their work leaked into public consciousness, sparking debate about ethics, security, and humanity's readiness for such advanced knowledge. Some hailed the project as a beacon of hope. Others condemned it as reckless meddling with forces beyond comprehension. One particularly tense evening, Alex returned home after an exhausting day at the lab to find Lyra sitting silently on the couch, her glowing patterns dimmed almost to invisibility. She looked up as Alex entered, her expression heavy with worry. "Something wrong?" Alex asked, dropping their bag onto the floor. Lyra hesitated before pointing toward the newsfeed playing softly on the apartment's holoscreen. A panel of experts debated whether the alien technology should be shared openly or classified under military control. One pundit argued that releasing the information could destabilize global economies, while another warned of catastrophic consequences if hostile nations gained access to it. Alex sighed deeply, sinking onto the couch beside Lyra. "It's getting harder," they admitted, rubbing their temples. "People are scared, and fear makes them irrational." Lyra reached out tentatively, placing a hand over Alex's. Her touch conveyed empathy and understanding, reminding Alex why they were doing this in the first place, not for fame or profit, but for the possibility of creating a better world. Together, they sat in silence, drawing strength from each other. Despite these mounting pressures, the team refused to give up. Their determination only grew stronger when they achieved their first major milestone, decoding a segment of the device containing sustainable energy solutions. The implications were staggering. If implemented correctly, the technology could provide clean, limitless power without harming the environment, a game-changer for Earth's struggling ecosystems. Excited by the breakthrough, Alex organized a presentation to showcase their findings to key stakeholders, including government officials, environmental advocates, and private investors. The event took place in a sleek auditorium filled with curious attendees eager to learn more. As Alex stood at the podium, explaining the science behind the discovery, Lyra watched from backstage, hidden from view. Her presence was palpable nonetheless, her glowing patterns visible through a crack in the curtain as she monitored the audience's reactions. The presentation went smoothly until the Q&A session, when skepticism reared its head. One official grilled Alex about the risks of sharing such powerful technology too widely. Another questioned whether humanity was morally prepared to wield it responsibly. Tensions rose as voices clashed, threatening to derail the entire initiative. That night, back at the apartment, Alex vented their frustrations to Lyra. "They don't get it," they said, pacing the room. "This isn't just about us. It's about helping everyone. Your people, my people, the planet itself." Lyra nodded slowly, then gestured toward the window. Outside, the city skyline glimmered under a starry sky. For a moment, they both stood there in silence, gazing at the vast expanse above. Then, as if struck by inspiration, Lyra grabbed the sketchpad and began drawing furiously. When she finished, she showed Alex the image. Two figures, one human, one alien, standing side by side beneath a tree whose branches stretched toward the stars. "It's beautiful," Alex whispered, smiling despite their exhaustion. "And you're right. We can't let fear stop us." Reinvigorated by Lyra's vision, Alex rallied the team to push forward. They launched a grassroots campaign to build public support for the project, emphasizing its potential to heal rather than harm. Social media buzzed with videos of Lyra's sketches and holographic demonstrations of the technology's benefits. Environmental activists championed the cause, arguing that humanity couldn't afford to squander such an opportunity. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. Yet, the battle wasn't won yet. Just as momentum seemed to turn in their favor, a group of xenophobic protesters staged a demonstration outside the lab, accusing the team of prioritizing alien interests over human needs. Security tightened around the facility, and Alex felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on them. Every decision felt fraught with risk, not just for the project, but for Lyra's safety. During one particularly heated exchange, a government representative suggested relocating Lyra to a secure facility for further study. Alex immediately shut down the idea, knowing it would terrify her and undermine the trust they had built. "She's not a specimen," Alex insisted firmly. "She's a person, with rights and dignity." The confrontation left Alex shaken, but Lyra's unwavering faith in them kept them grounded. That night, as they sat together reviewing data projections, she placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, humming softly. Her patterns brightened, filling the room with warmth and reassurance. In that moment, Alex realized something profound. They weren't fighting alone. This was a shared mission, born of mutual respect and hope. Finally, after months of relentless effort, the team succeeded in fully decoding the device. Its secrets spilled forth like a floodlight piercing darkness. Revolutionary methods for reversing climate change, curing diseases, and restoring damaged ecosystems. The implications were breathtaking, offering solutions to some of humanity's most pressing crises. When the final results were announced, the response was overwhelming. Scientists hailed the discovery as a turning point in history. World leaders pledged cooperation, promising to implement the new technologies responsibly. Even skeptics who had once opposed the project acknowledged its transformative potential. For Alex and Lyra, the victory was bittersweet. While they celebrated the success of their hard-fought endeavor, They knew their time together was nearing its end. Lyra's homeworld awaited. Her people needed her now more than ever. Yet neither of them regretted the journey they had undertaken. Through trials and triumphs, they had forged a bond that transcended worlds, proving that even in the face of adversity, compassion and collaboration could light the way forward. As they stood together watching the sunrise over the city, Alex felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for what they had accomplished, but for the extraordinary friendship that had made it all possible. Whatever lay ahead, they knew they would carry this experience with them forever. The culmination of their efforts brought both joy and sorrow. The decoded knowledge from Lyra's device was shared globally, igniting a wave of positive change that rippled across Earth. Nations collaborated like never before, implementing sustainable energy systems, restoring damaged ecosystems, and developing medical advancements that saved millions of lives. Cities once choked by pollution began to breathe again. Rivers ran clear, and forests reclaimed land long thought lost. Humanity stood on the brink of a brighter future, a testament to the power of unity and innovation. For Alex, however, the triumph was tinged with bittersweet emotions. They knew that Lyra's time on Earth was coming to an end. Her mission had always been twofold: to survive and to bring hope back to her people. Now, armed with the knowledge her device contained, she could return home, not empty-handed, but bearing gifts that might save her world. On the morning of Lyra's departure, Alex woke early, unable to sleep. The apartment felt unusually quiet without her soft hums or glowing patterns lighting up the walls. Alex wandered into the living room, where Lyra sat quietly, gazing at the small garden they had nurtured together. The plants swayed gently in the breeze from the open window, their leaves reaching toward the sunlight, as though bidding farewell. "You ready?" Alex asked softly, sitting beside her. Lyra turned to look at them, her luminous eyes filled with gratitude and sadness. She nodded slowly, then reached out to touch Alex's hand. Her patterns flared brightly, conveying a flood of emotions: gratitude for Alex's kindness, admiration for their resilience, and sorrow at the thought of leaving. For a moment, no words were needed. The connection between them transcended language. "I'm going to miss you," Alex admitted, their voice trembling slightly. "But I'm so proud of everything we've done. You've given both our worlds a chance to heal." Lyra smiled faintly, her patterns dimming and brightening in a rhythm that almost resembled laughter. Then she retrieved a small crystal from her pocket and held it out to Alex. It was smooth and translucent, shimmering faintly in the light. Embedded within it were recordings of their time together: their first meeting under the neon overpass, their shared meals, their late-night conversations, and even snippets of poetry Lyra had sketched during those evenings on the balcony. "This is for me?" Alex asked, taking the crystal carefully. Lyra nodded, placing a hand over her heart and miming gratitude. Alex understood immediately. It was a token of friendship, a reminder of the bond they had forged despite their differences. Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as they clutched the crystal tightly. "Thank you," they whispered. "I'll treasure this forever." Later that day, Alex accompanied Lyra to the outskirts of the city, where a spacecraft awaited her. The vessel had been constructed using a combination of human engineering and alien technology, designed specifically to transport her safely back to Velora. As they approached the sleek, silver craft, Alex couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come since finding Lerma huddled beneath the overpass. What had started as an act of compassion had grown into something far greater, a partnership that bridged worlds. Before boarding, Lyra paused, turning to face Alex one last time. She extended her hand, palm upward, and hummed softly. This time, the sound carried not just emotion but a message, a promise. Though Alex couldn't fully understand the words, they felt their meaning deep within their soul. "We are connected now. Forever." Alex placed their hand in hers, nodding solemnly. "Safe travels, Lyra," they said, their voice steady despite the lump in their throat. "Tell your people Tell them thank you. And tell them we're rooting for them." With that, Lyra stepped aboard the ship. The hatch closed behind her, sealing her off from the world she had grown to love. Alex stood there, watching as the engines roared to life, casting a brilliant glow across the horizon. Slowly, the spacecraft ascended, leaving trails of light in its wake until it disappeared among the stars. As Alex walked back toward the city, they clutched the crystal tightly in their hand, feeling its warmth against their palm. Though Lyra was gone, her presence lingered. In the stories they had shared, in the garden they had planted together, and in the brighter future her device had made possible. Alex realized that their journey wasn't truly over. By helping Lyra, they had rediscovered their own purpose, reigniting passions they had let fade, and forging connections they hadn't known they needed. Back at the apartment, Alex placed the crystal on the bookshelf, nestled among the novels and journals that had played such a pivotal role in their relationship. They smiled faintly, imagining Lyra somewhere far away, sharing fragments of Earth's culture with her people while working to rebuild their shattered world. Perhaps someday, when the time was right, humans and Valorans would meet again, not as strangers, but as allies united by trust and hope. That night, as Alex sat on the balcony gazing at the stars, they felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Taking in a homeless alien woman had changed their life in ways they could never have imagined. It had reminded them of humanity's capacity for empathy, creativity, and resilience. And though Lyra was no longer by their side, her influence would remain etched in their heart forever. The stars above seemed brighter than usual, twinkling like tiny beacons of possibility. Somewhere out there, Lyra was traveling toward a new beginning. For herself, for her people, and perhaps for two interconnected worlds. As Alex leaned back in their chair, they allowed themselves to dream of what might come next. After all, the story didn't end here. It was merely the start of something greater, a legacy of hope that would continue to shine, like the constellations above, for generations to come.